morning. Today we're going to do a stew, a beef stew. Every country has their own recipe for a stew. In the US, it's usually potatoes, onions, carrots, celery in a beef broth. And I am going to shake it up with just the things that I have at my house. And you could do the same, just substitute things from your pantry and in your refrigerator that can make this stew. So you can add lots of different kinds of vegetables. You're not just beholden to the potato, onion, carrot thing. I'm actually going to be doing this in a instant pot, but this can be done in a Dutch oven and even slipped into an oven and do it that way without any monitoring or stirring. So there's a lot of different ways you can cook this stew. So just a couple things about the Instapot. There is a line here, right here, that you can't add anything above that. So be sure that when you are adding all your vegetables and liquid to cover those vegetables, you're not going above that line, or else you won't get the kind of pressure that you need to cook it all. And it won't ever come to pressure. Okay, to begin with, we want to coat our beef with flour or cornstarch. If you want to do gluten-free, you're more than welcome to use cornstarch, a gluten-free cornstarch. I add salt and pepper at this stage, and then toss it all to coat. And I use a coarse ground pepper. I like pepper. If you don't like pepper, you can eliminate it. There's no reason to have it in there if you don't like it. So you want to coat all the pieces of meat. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start the Instapot with a hot oil and sear the meat until it's browned. Now I'm going to have to do it in 2 batches because this is so much meat, and I want it to be able to brown really nicely in the pan. Okay, to start the pan heating up, you press the saute button. And what that does is it heats the bottom element right down there at the bottom, and that's going to be heated up really quickly. We're going to cover it with oil and let that heat up. I'm going to put about half of the meat in. It's not going to sear if you keep moving it around. So what I'm going to do is try to flatten it all so each piece is touching the bottom of the pan. And we will come back later in about 5 minutes and I'll start stirring it. And that's to get the first caramelization on the first side. Okay, it is starting to steam and brown, and so I'm just going to scrape it off the bottom, stir it, and I'll just keep stirring it till all sides are brown. This batch is ready to take out. It's browned on all sides. Look at the lovely fond on the bottom of this pan. Now you might think, ooh, I don't want to clean that, but you'll be surprised when you cook your stew. All of that comes off into the stew, and that's extra flavoring that you're getting in the stew by having that. So there's the last of it. Put that extra flour on there. Again, spread this out. Do an even layer. This side looks like it's time to scrape it up. It's not browning as quickly. I'm going to add a little bit more oil. I think we've lost some of our moisture. That's good. So now I'm going to strip the rest of this meat out so that we can cook our onions. I want the onions and mushrooms to be softened before we add everything else. You know, this recipe is as much work as doing it in a regular pot. I guess the beauty of it is it won't stew for hours. In the Instapot, it's like a 15-minute cook time. And that's where you save. Okay, in with the onions. That's 2 onions. I've also got 2 cups of mushrooms that I'm going to put in at the same time. Mushrooms give a wonderful flavoring to things, that umami taste, kind of a deep taste that's unique. And again, I'm just going to stir this till they kind of break apart and get coated with the oil, and then leave them to cook for a minute. Okay, to those mushrooms and onions, I'm going to be adding a sweet potato, some celery. You could add any kind of vegetable you have, the meat on top of that. So I'm going to push it all down because I would like, when I add the liquid, to have the meat to be covered. There's a couple ways you can season your meat. You can use a meat, like a beef broth, which I did. I used 1 can of that, or 1 box of that. Let's see how far that keeps us. Okay, so that's good enough, because also there's a lot of moisture in the vegetables, so when they start stewing, that'll add more moisture. I can sprinkle a beef stew packet. If I don't have that, I can make my own with some paprika, some tomatoes, some thyme. Let's see, what's the other ingredients? Black pepper, salt, and onion, but we've got the onion in there. So that's basically the flavoring of a stew, is the Hungarian sweet paprika. Okay, I'm going to sprinkle some, or add some more water. We've got about 1 inch more that we need to bring up to the top of the meat, and then we'll be able to start it. And make sure when you're putting your lid on that you've got it to sealing, not venting. Make sure it's turned off so that you can get pressure. And there, my pressure cooker has a meat stew. Okay, this will cook for about, mine says 55 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and put it up to 60. That's about 2/3. I would, on the stovetop, you would probably simmer your stew for about 2 to 3 hours, and same in the oven. So we're cutting the time 1/3. But remember, that 1 hour does not count the time it's getting up to pressure, nor the cooling down time until this little tab drops. So it is 1 hour, but it could be more like 1.5 hours.